So whatever exercises, sometimes I'm doing stuff that I don't know, just practicing arpeggios.
Okay, so Nora Bite, thank you very much for joining me today and for agreeing to be interviewed.
Right. I'm gonna probably ask you questions back. So.
So I know you as a jazz guitarist. Do you define yourself as a jazz guitarist, or do you think of yourself as a part jazz guitarist, part arranger, part composer?
I suppose the second one more. I kind of keep switching, so I suppose more part. Sometimes I focus more on jazz, sometimes I focus more on arranging and composing. So yeah.
I mean, your daily routines, when you're playing guitar, what are you working on when you're just playing guitar and you're picking it up for the first time in that day? What's your aim?
So it depends, some weeks I would have to prepare for a gig. So then I keep that in mind. Okay, so there's that kind of gig, so I have to work on that kind of stuff. So then I sort of, really focus on that kind of thing that I'm working on at the time, whatever that would be. Like if I'm playing with a singer, I would be like working on reading and improvising as a solo, if it's like a duo, for example. If it's a quartet gig, or if it's something that I'm the one that calls the tunes and I'm working those tunes, whatever comes up. Like if there's nothing on, then I work on my repertoire. I work on my time. I work on fluency over neck. I would be like, sometimes I pick up something. Usually it's just picking something that I'm bad at. That's the best sort of thing to say, I suppose, as well. But that's what I try to do. Sometimes it's just something I've been working on for a while, and so I keep working. I know that, okay, that's, I've been working on this, so I have to keep working on this, whatever that would be, maybe time field, right? Then just defining something I'm bad at and creating the goal around that, I suppose.
I guess when you're working, and you're saying you're trying to work on your weakest points. Obviously they change. They can change from day to day, week to week. So I notice as well, because you're a finger style player. You're a picker. Does some of that work involve improving your picking technique itself?
I wouldn't say I think about it that much. I think I suppose I don't think that much about what the picking, the technique. I mean, sometimes I do pick practice actually. When it comes to finger stuff, I have like these patterns that I do that I suppose I don't work on it like really focused in a focused manner. So that's sort of, I suppose that's just something it's probably not right way to say it, because I don't, but when I work with the pick, actually work on a pick playing, then I actually think more about like precision or okay, I have to work on this pathway, moving from this arpeggio to this arpeggio or things like that, the specific things that seems okay, that's where my problem appeared. Okay, let's work, let's magnify that particular thing. So I think I do that with fingers as well. I sort of try to, find, again, the same answer. Just try to find little things that is bad, and then I say, okay, let's focus on that for a little bit.
So, because I seem to see you playing more with your fingers than with a pick.
Yeah.
Do
I
you feel
seem
that
to
you're more
post them.
natural with playing with the fingers, and therefore you don't tend to need to think about it quite so much? Is it? That's the
Yeah.
case?
Yeah. I kind of like just I've been doing that for more, than with a pick
Well, that
because of my
yeah, that well, that was yeah. Sorry, I'll carry
because
on.
of my background, because sort of one of the I suppose I could say that I started as a flamenco guitarist, although it wasn't the very very start, but so I sort of like was a little stubborn, and then I just kept playing with fingers, electric guitar, and I had to change everything about it though. Like there's nothing flamenco
So
anymore.
what age did you start playing the guitar?
Um, Around 13, 14, so quite late.
Okay, and what drew you to the instrument? What was the thing that attracted you to it?
Just silly things, just silly kind of like I was, liking the pop rock band or whatever. Like I wanted to, have a band. Like I have a friend, I had a friend that I was, let's start a band, and then I started practicing,
So what
started taking
did you say?
lessons.
Pop rock?
Yeah. It's kind of like beginning stage was very sort of
So you
shallow,
wanted the
and
pose?
I just wanted to. I was singing a little bit, not like any kind of proper level singing, but sort of like I was actually composing like singer songwriter kind of songs and just playing them. So that was pretty much that. I started taking lessons, and that was that very beginning. And then I went to this guitar week. So I'm from Latvia. There's this we had this like once a year. There's like this small town um, where it's like a week of guitar workshops and stuff. And there's like a bunch of different teachers, and you stay there for a week and hang out and, and all that. So that was actually my first experience meeting other guitarists, other musicians. I was like, wow, this is amazing. And the common thread there in that guitarist hang, my newfound guitarist hang, was the blues, and jazz was sort of like a thing. Like, okay, you start with blues, and then there was a flamenco teacher that popped up, and then I was like, okay, I want to do that as well.
So flamenco was something did you think seriously about the flamenco?
I think at the time I didn't think that seriously about any of these things. I was kind of like just sort of like liking this, thing. Like I was like, okay, and then I would be like, as a, and it was rare for girls to play good, So I was like, I felt like I had to prove myself, because I was like, you play good for a girl or things like that, So I was kind of annoyed about that stuff. So that's why I picked up flamenco, because it seemed pretty kind of impressive style. So I think I wanted to impress people. That's one of the things in the beginning.
So it sounds like you were pretty open-minded about the whole music thing right from the start. That you were just
I didn't
just
have
taking
like
it in.
Yeah, I think I became more disciplined much later. At the time, I was a bit more like, I had teachers, and then I was, following what they were giving me, and but yeah, I was kind of like, okay, this is where I am, and then everything kind of leads one thing to other. Like then there was flamenco, and then there was blues, so those things kind of, happened in similar period of time. Even though it's two totally different styles, but I was playing both.
And that's obviously where you really must have got into the finger picking, no? And the right hand.
Yeah, because of, obviously, I think because I had the flamenco teacher that was all finger picking, of course, and it was specific techniques. It's different techniques than I'm using now, like picado, this. Or bent. I don't know how you call it in classical.
Well, piccato, it's pretty straight fingers playing, following through on the string,
Yeah, and how do you call this? when you play
Well,
bent
there's like
fingers?
there's apoyando and tirando when the fingers are bent, but there's one is the apoyando is when you hit the string and you rest on the next string, and
All right.
and tirando is where you play the string, but the finger moves backwards, away from.
Oh wow.
Oh, so it doesn't come to rest on another string. Tirandos.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting. How do I do it? How do I do it?
Yeah, it looks like tirando. Yeah, it's free strokes. Yeah.
Okay.
Are you coming to rest on the next string? You're not coming to rest on the next string.
No, what I do. So that's something I came up with because I had to solve a lot of problems in this process of not listening to my teacher and not taking the pick. Like I was like, no, I want to play with fingers, and he was like, and I'm playing with nails as well, not just. So it was kind of unusual for electric guitar, and he was kind of saying, yeah, but, and he was right, I when I think back, like, there's a lot of like things I had to overcome, a lot of problems, because on electric guitar, it's just, so one of the things I came up with, I always keep my thumb all over the rest of the strings, so I don't touch other strings, so they wouldn't be like, I like how some people put scrunchy or something like that here. Have you seen that?
Oh yes, yeah. That's
kind of,
when people are tapping,
Oh yeah, that as well. But I've seen bass players and guitarists do it as well.
Yeah, you have to have. Yeah, you have that helps when you're tapping. It stops all the other strings ringing, doesn't it?
Yeah. So for me, I probably could have got away with that. Like if I knew I can put a scrunchie, I probably wouldn't have to do this. But I'm so used to do it now that I kind of like. I always keep my thumb on the rest of strings. Whatever I'm doing, I'm kind of always muting the rest of them, so I wouldn't have like the extra sound.
Yeah.
I want to.
Yeah. So, like the way classical players play, and they play like. Yeah.
You mean like arpeggio?
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Do you do all those sort of? Do you have to do specific exercises for those?
Well, I mean, because my technique is something I came up with, so I didn't follow any kind of pathway. I came up with different things that solved a lot of problems I had. Yeah. So therefore, this particular thing that you're showing, I haven't focused on it. I haven't focused on it as a technique thing, but I do things that involves that, like for like that piece, that. Or whatever exercises I'm doing. Yeah. So I would, yeah. So whatever exercises sometimes I'm doing stuff that I don't know. Just practicing arpeggios. I don't know why I'm doing it. I don't have I want to improve my arpeggios. It's just something I implement when I practice like voice.
It strikes me as an advantage of being a finger player. When you're playing jazz chords and you're playing, say, specific 4-finger chords.
Yeah.
It strikes me as being a very efficient way of playing those 4-note chords.
Exactly.
Rather than a pick, with where you're having to.
But I kind of like the fact that I can like do this and then I can do this.
Yeah.
And I can like also. So it's kind of like some people do this hybrid picking thing, right?
Yeah.
But it seems like hybrid picking, they have less fingers than I have. So, so I kind of think, I'm going to just... there's no point on me.
There's swings and roundabouts because you're holding a pick. So you've got the fluency of a pick, but you've got the restricted hand.
Yeah. Not enough fingers in my opinion.
So your pick is acting like your thumb.
Yeah.
And then you've lost your index finger, and then you're left with these two fingers where whereas really you need your thumb, your index finger and your middle finger. They're the most flexible in terms, and the most you've got the most dexterity in those 3 fingers. And
Yeah,
then,
yeah, but I think that's from a classical and finger player's point of view. I think for people who are just really fluent with a pick, for them it's not like that. I mean, they can play arpeggios really, smoothly, with
yeah,
a pick, so they don't even, I
yeah,
see some people playing like
yeah.
so.
But when it comes to playing the chords, if they're doing that
Just to
thing, they're
have
holding
that is a
a
drum.
pick, and then they have to pick the strings like that, and then but it seems to me they've only got three
Yeah,
possibles. Otherwise you've either got to play two notes with the thumb, with the pick,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and then so it seems like whichever technique you have, it seems like there's no one perfect technique.
Yeah, that's
And a
true.
lot of people come up with variations like involving the pick and then fingers and the rest of it, but still, it's like it eludes us that the perfect solution is not possible.
Yeah, there's also people who like learn how to hold a pick either in the middle of the hand, so it's to switch from the pick
Yes,
to the finger in the middle,
I tried
or
that.
they do it. Yeah, how did it go?
I tried everything. I tried holding the pick in the palm, and then, but again, it's restrictive.
Yeah, yeah,
And
because
then there are
you don't have
ways of kind
flexibility.
of folding it inwards, so you end up either holding it with your index finger,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so you can sort of
you're
fold, and
limited with.
then I even tried some gigs. I had a tray. I've got this tray that I lined with, like, it looks like it's like artificial grass. So so it's on top of this tray. So I could, because it was too noisy for me to be able to throw the pick onto this tray, because I wanted to see if it's possible to play and pick the get the pick off the tray,
But where do
play, and
you
then put it
keep
down.
that tray? Where do you keep it?
Well, I put it on a tripod, so I've got
Oh,
it
I see.
affixed to a tripod. So I tried it on stage to see whether it's possible to go between a pick and fingers, because I was always told that my improvisation, so especially in my early years, my improvisation with my fingers was a lot better than when I used a plectrum,
Hmm.
and I probably got more confidence using fingers than I ever had with a plectrum, and so that's the reason why I was asking those questions, because if I'm
Because
using
you're
a
a
pick,
similar journey.
I have to
Yeah,
really practice with it.
yeah, yeah.
Even though I'm quite natural, and I'm quite happy playing with the pick, but I would always want to do that extra bit of work, because technically I always feel, well, I mean, I have to do the extra work with my fingers anyway, but
Yeah.
I don't have the confidence with with the pick that I would have with my fingers. And funny enough, I think they were right in my improvisation. I think my improvisations are better with my fingers than with a pick. But I'm not as experienced as you, for instance. You've worked a lot more at
Well, I
improvisation
don't know.
than I would have done. So
Well, I don't know. Don't know.
I guess it's down to feeling comfortable, isn't it, with whatever medium you choose, whatever way you approach the instrument. In other words, it
Yeah.
sounds like to me you're aware of you're aware of its limitations, and you're aware of the limitations of the limbs.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, there's stuff that sounds better with a pick. There's just
Yeah,
precision, it's just there's certain things like you can't play funk with fingers. Um,
yeah,
and things like that. And like these, you can't do that. It just doesn't sound the same. Like there's no attack.
yeah,
Um, but in the same time, when I have like some things that I play, like it's just stuff that I play that is designed, things, some lines or whatever that I've been, doing, is kind of like really, they are there because I was playing with fingers. So therefore, to transfer those lines, because those lines are kind of like something I don't do consciously. I don't sort of, hey, I'm gonna do that line. It's just stuff that kind of comes out, and obviously I worked on certain things for those things to come out. But with a pick, it's just, I think it's a different kind of lines I would play. Like, and there's different sound and different lines, but that's just personal to me.
mm,
I no way would say to somebody that they have to play with fingers, because I thought it was just silly of me to even do that. But I kind of, now at this point, I see good things about it as well.
So when you're playing, when you're doing a gig, and especially like a jazz gig, do you always have a pick nearby just in case you feel like, oh, I'm going into that area and I'm is that is that what you always have?
Yeah. I keep it on my music stand. It's there. Yeah, even two picks, one in pocket and one. I just sometimes wanna have that sound.
And so is that and so that's for the attack, and is that for attack and speed? Sort of when you want to.
I wouldn't say it's for the speed. I actually think I play faster with fingers because I do a lot of hammer-ons. So it's not the picking that it's a lot of hammer-on stuff.
Yeah.
That makes, again, just something that I do. I don't know. It's just sometimes I feel. I don't know. It's how I feel. Like it's not like something. I calculated that. Sometimes I think my time sometimes is better when I play with a pick. So then when I'm more conscious of my timing, then I'm like wanting to play with pick because it just naturally it makes the time better, basically. At least for me.
Have you played much Latin American and sort of bossa-nova type things? I mean, because the jazz musicians that I see, they often always integrate, those kind of styles.
Yeah. So, I have done a little bit, yeah.
And that's where you would and again, is this where your picking technique
comes
helps you
handy? Yeah, exactly.
Because it's more authentic, isn't it? That. Yeah.
That kind of thing. You do that kind of stuff? You do bossa-nova stuff? Well, it sounds better now. Like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it lends itself to fingers, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. It kind of feels natural. It's the best with the nylon string with the Godin guitar, the other one. I had played a couple of Brazilian bands on and off some years ago, but not recent times. And sometimes I would play with Brazilian musicians, and then it kind of, I suppose they influenced me.
When you're composing, do you draw on these influences, and do you try to recall these experiences and try to sort of, put yourself in that perspective again and try and write something with that in mind? Do you ever do that sort of thing?
So, sometimes I compose the stuff that I am working on. It comes out of something I'm working around, and then I just become. So I'm working on this thing, and then instead of working on only this thing that I'm supposed to be working, I start to be a bit creative. I start to come up with stuff on top, and then that just turns into composing. Although I need to kind of stop that sometimes to actually work on the thing.
You see, this leads me to one of the questions I wanted to ask you, which is why jazz? How did you end up settling on jazz, and what was it about jazz? Was it the breadth? The fact that it can incorporate so many different things. It's almost limitless, or what was it?
Yeah, I suppose that's a good way to put it. Well, first of all, I just love it, like at this point. But in the beginning, there's many things that happened. Some things that just sort of like where I was with the people I was. I think everyone have these early experiences where like people that are influential to you like somehow makes that impact, and then you kind of believe in something being superior or other thing, whatever. But yeah, that's the early thing. When at this point it's just so much freedom, because I'm naturally creative. So just my mind is, more. Yeah, just that improvisation is like composing. Composing is improvisation. Improvisation is composing. It's kind of, I think, it's just composing is more organized, but improvisation is also organized because you have to follow the changes when it comes to jazz improvising. So it's not like, so yeah, just because I'm naturally creative, I suppose that's the short answer. And just so much to do there. Like there's so many approaches, like thousands of ways how to approach.
So do you see it like, do you see jazz as jazz, or do you see jazz as fusion?
What do you mean?
Well, do you see jazz as an evolving thing that's a specific entity, or do you see jazz as a limitless title for a limitless number of ways to fuse different styles?
Oh, okay, I understand. I see what you mean. Depends who I'm talking to. There are some people who are more kind of like jazz, who would say jazz is swing and jazz has to swing, and then at that point it's like you kind of speaking, and also people are like particularly doing fusion. That again means a specific thing. So when you say fusion, it's fusion of styles, but to some people it actually means a certain sound. And then that's again like do you like then that person is associated with that sound, that's what they like. And then that's not swing. So okay, so there are many answers to this question, like what is jazz, what is jazz, is there like, what does it mean? It means many things. Even to me, it means many things. Like I would be saying, yeah, I like acoustic jazz when it swings and there's double bass and piano is acoustic instead of synth, right? But so yeah, that's just, I don't know if I think it's just it's just a word. I think I like improvised music that is more free, right? Like that would be more a better word, And I love jazz as well for what people call it for jazz. The people like jazz purists that they say, right? Because like the swing, double bass, that's jazz. So, and I love it. I love that as well.
So is the
but
title,
I also love other things.
So would you say the title jazz, is it misleading? In today's context.
So what is today's context?
Well, I mean, does jazz mean jazz? Is it a clearly defined genre? Or
even Miles Davis and people like, other people, all the jazz musicians, a lot of jazz musicians in history hated that word jazz. So I don't know. It's like it's putting stuff in a box, and of course it's necessary to do that for music business purposes, for clarifying this is what it is and this is where you're coming to, and then you're compared to something so people know what to expect when they come to listen to your music. But that's, I think that's more for business purposes rather than as a musician. I just like, I don't know, I like any music, not any, but
So was there a point that when you decided to sort of go for this jazz guitar thing, did you actually learn, did you have something in mind that says, I need to learn the language of jazz? And what was it you went about doing, like with the guitar? What did you specifically do? So in other words, what was your concept of jazz that you thought it was at the time, and what language did you think you had to learn in order to play jazz? What were your goals, in other words? What did you set out to do with your guitar playing? Does that make sense?
Yeah. There's a different answer for me to say what did I think in the very beginning when I started studying jazz to what I think now. So I was pretty naive back then, and maybe.
What did you start by doing? What was your starting point when you said, right, I'm going to play jazz, this is what I'm going to do? So what did you do?
Well, the first thing that happened was my first paid gigs was in a restaurant, and as a solo kind of guitar, and there I had some flamenco pieces that I knew, or falsettos, that bunch of falsettos in these two or three rhythms that I knew at the time. And then on top of that, I had this book that had these fingerstyle arrangements with Joe Pass and other things and other composers. Sorry, not composers. I don't remember actually exactly, but I just learned some fingerstyle arrangements. So at the time, I thought that's jazz, but those were just fingerstyle arrangements. And then I was playing those, and I thought, okay, I'm kind of playing jazz, but it's at the time I didn't know. And then what happened next? I went to the jazz camp thing, and then there was like some teachers. And then I started studying in this jazz school, and that's when I was just given these, this is what you're supposed to do, like learn the scales and be learning these tunes. So I was just kind of following direction at the time. But I would, the bebop language, when it comes to like jazz language, I don't know. Do you mean bebop language when you say that?
Well, I mean, I would guess so, because that was really the culmination of a specific style that we would call jazz, and then there was a point not long afterwards that it veered off in two, I would say two or more quite specific directions. One was trying to maintain the classicism of jazz, and the other one clearly was the opposite of that. It was progressive, and it was revolutionary.
But even now, there's like a lot of new jazz that comes out is influenced by I think in some ways classical music as well. So now it's happening all the time. I mean, these kind of things that comes in to jazz and jazz musicians. I think it's more like curiosity of jazz musicians exploring other styles, and then they start to implement. But when it comes to bebop language, that's a certain sound, that and certain rules to make that sound. So that's something I kind of understood a bit later. Even after, I think only when I moved to London, I started understanding exactly, what the bebop language is, and I even. And that's also, I think it's a choice to sound like that. Like, so having, there's choice, and in college, it's, people are told to, so listen to Bud Powell, listen to Charlie Parker, transcribe those. So you can, and that's a certain sound. But then you can also spend years on transcribing, Sonny Rollins, which is as well, jazz, but again, the sound is the phrasing is different, so the language is a little different. So there are all these little, you can listen to transcribe one musician for a long time, or Monk, you can sound so different when you improvise if you listen a lot of Monk, or you listen a lot of Charlie Parker and transcribe any of those. So
who ripped up the rules and just wrote, to hell with this? Who was the first person?
There was like I think there's many people to come and do that. Like Charlie Parker did that as well. He, like, before Louis Armstrong, like there was, it was more entertainment kind of art, so then Charlie Parker came, and was bullied.
Do you mean that the early what we'd call more like traditional jazz? Would you say that's more functional, that it served a functional purpose?
I don't say any of these things because I appreciate each of those eras. Like I don't have those kind of opinions that like this is what it's supposed to be and there's nothing else. Like I don't have it I don't see it that way. I hear someone playing, saxophonist playing, Sonny Rollins line, and I love it. I love hearing it. Like, I love, you know, I don't know, like, and then I listen to currently what comes out of New York currently, which, you know, some of his odd time signatures and old tunes taken, made into totally something else, right?
Mm,
And I love it. I love that as well.
mm.
Like, you know, I don't have that sort of like, that's it, that's what it's supposed to be, and that's not it. Like, I don't know, I think you can look at each of those things and see for what it is,
Is that
because
is that a
everything
problem
came
with the
out of
commercialization of music then, that people try to sort of put it into boxes, and then like the ethic of jazz wants to resist this and just say, you know, no, you can't do that.
I don't know, like, there's a lot of problems with music industry, you know, like, I think it's business side of it, like, you want to sell stuff. Is that what you're asking, or like?
Well, I guess you know, the genre. Who sets genre? You know,
Who's
it's
that?
not. Sometimes it's the artist, but very often, or the biggest influence was probably the record companies in the 1950s, like Blue Note Records and the rest of it. They would have to have ways of selling their music, wouldn't they?
Well, the thing is, it still happens, you know. People who are in power, they have certain taste, and then that's what they push, you know.
Hmm.
That's just what it is. I mean, it's a human thing, you know.
Are we
We just
better
have to.
off? Are we better off now with the fact that the record companies don't have so much power, and perhaps radio stations don't have as much power, and that you can make a recording at home, and if you want to put it out to the world, you can. Is that is that a better
On one
situation to be
hand,
in?
on one hand, I think all these, it's created more problems as well, you know. Just now, everyone is a superstar when they haven't gone through, you know, the hardships. So I don't know. That I think, but in the same time, you know, there's auto-tune. So, you know, like, I don't think there's any kind of perfect solution to anything. Like, there's going to be one solution, there's going to be like some, you know, downsides about it. So
Mm.
I don't
Now,
know.
now I've seen something about your one really interesting thing I find about your guitar playing is your approach to chords and inversions, and
Mm,
you're looking for sort of chord melodies.
yeah.
I've you know, because I've looked at some of your pieces, and you've got some really interesting chords, and you've got lines that are moving, sometimes either side, on the treble side, on the melody side, or sometimes on the bass side.
Yeah.
So that kind of approach to chords and inversions, that takes an awful lot of research, doesn't it? And practice.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how do you go about discovering? So when you're looking at specific chords, do you specifically work on, like, sitting down and saying, right, I'm going to work out all the inversions of, you know, like at one time, you know, you must have sat down and thought, right, I'm going to work out all the inversions of so and so chords, and then see what I can do with it within. Is that how you work? Would you do it like look at a chord and think, how can I implement it against, say, a particular scale or a mode, and move the lines around according to a mode? Or would you be freer? Would you be looking for atonality and or appoggiaturas? How do you approach these kind of things in practice?
It depends from the situation, what I'm doing. Like, if I'm composing, I don't really have I don't think of it from kind of, I don't constrain myself that way, unless I decide to, you know, unless I say, hey, I'm gonna write a piece that is in, you know, melodic minor second mode or whatever like that. Oh, let's do it that way. And then I find voicings that um like, I've done learning the voicings all over the neck, but mostly it's just the stuff that and then adding things like nines and seventh nines and 13s, all these things, which is, you know, that's just basics thing that you kind of have to do to be able to improvise.
Yeah, I was just interested in the way you kind of would go about looking at particular chords or scales, or did you make a conscious effort to learn? I mean, to learn the modes and learn other synthetic modes. How did you?
Yeah.
How do
Well,
you
I
regard
went
the
through.
scales as your a language of jazz? Did you choose specific ones?
Yeah. Have done that. I think of that as a basics work, like that stuff. Like, hey, I need to go through the modes, and when it comes to diatonic or whatever, and then there's harmonic minor, harmonic major, and melodic minor modes. Also, the modes. I sort of done that. So I've done the stuff that I'm supposed to be doing. That's how I answer that. Like that's kind of basics to know the instrument in the way I think about it. But when it comes to voicings, that's when it's more like I know the rules of how the music works. And then I, in some ways, sometimes just break them. that's one. But I don't know. I don't think I'm answering very very well. Like sometimes I'm just sort of like I would look at the book. Sometimes I get inspiration. I would be working on a book, Hexatonics by Jerry Berganzi, for example, right? And he's got this concept of triad pairs, right? And that's 6 note. It's a scale, that comes out of 2 different triads that isn't called particularly anything. It's 6, so that then I, sometimes I would, that's one of the ways I would do it. There's like 100 ways how I approach it. So that's one way, like, hey, how can I use these 6 notes or whatever combination of notes as well and create something out of this. And then that usually helps me as a beginning point. And then afterwards I start to build these separate lines. So sometimes I think of counterpoint moving lines. Sometimes I think of just, hey, I want to work on these voicings and how can I, sometimes I want to work on something and that's how something comes around. So yeah, I don't know if I answered that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes. So does your composition rely on your guitar playing, or is your composition separate from your guitar playing?
Again, I don't have one answer. Sometimes it's that, sometimes the other. Sometimes I come up with stuff on the guitar, and sometimes I come up with stuff writing. I write on a computer. I don't write it with a pencil. I used to write with a pencil, but these days I kind of write on a computer. So then it's both.
So do you sometimes write things that you have to learn? And you write something in theory, and then you set about trying to learn how to play it.
No, that's not it. No. That's a different thing. When I said that, is me trying. So I'm working on something specific. Say I'm working on melodic minor, and that's when I just come up ways how to work on it. And then that's when something comes out that is more melodic, and I was like, oh, hey, this can be a composition. So that's one way. So I'm actually with the instruments, so I'm not writing it down before I already came up with the idea. But when I write without an instrument, that's not when I'm working on something. That's when I'm sort of combining things that I hear, as well as with musical theory knowledge, and then because on computer you can also play it back. So I know proper. I know that real composers they can hear everything as they write, but sort of I play it back.
When you're playing and you're improvising, do you consciously try to play dissonances or favorite dissonances? Do you have any particular dissonances that you like to go for, or do you like to be able to play? Do you think of the like a mode and try and move outside of the mode consciously, or do you just let go and think, I'm not going to think of any modes, I'm just going to play like on instinct and play whichever notes and patterns that I feel like playing.
Do you talk about improvisation or
Yeah,
no?
improvisation.
When it comes to improvisation, I don't actually play. I don't think modes. First of all, I think chord tones. So therefore, when I think chord tones, so I would move in and out of them.
Yeah.
Therefore, that's yeah, I do that. But I always make sure when the chord changes, I'm still in a chord tone. Therefore, yeah, that's what I do.
Yeah, I've seen some of your videos where you're talking about starting on a chord tone and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
moving towards the next chord tone.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
pretty much
I've seen.
that.
Yeah.
So I think.
Yeah. It's an interesting approach. I mean, because I mean, it leaves a lot open between what you can do between each chord. You know.
I think this approach, I've seen many people doing it, but maybe in slightly different way. Like, it's just an exercise to only play chord tones. But as you can do that, then you start to move around these chord tones. There's even exercises I've seen from, some people like teachers or books and stuff, where, there's like chromatic approaches to each note of the chord tone, just, up and, I don't know, like, so you have like a like F major, right? So these kind of things, like,
Yeah.
that's those exercises I've heard, but it's not exactly what I do. But I think it's not very. What I do is, I think it's pretty common, but maybe it's just the way the way I
find
approach
those appoggiaturas that are around those notes. When you listen to Mozart, he's very, very cheeky the way he uses those notes, and the way that he hits the note, and he's letting the audience know that there's no way he's going to let that dissonance remain unresolved. But he likes to wallow in the moment, just to play with you for that extra little bit of time before he shifts.
But no, I do like dissonances. I must
it's very
say.
cheeky, that approach to have a, especially in classical music, because at that time there was a very much a set kind of feeling that the audience had this kind of set of that they were attuned to the rule book, and they knew that certain things were permissible. And then when Mozart came along and started playing with these strange little notes that he would hold, and he would just hold for that little bit longer, that you think just that act of dissonance, and you can just tell that he had a sense of humour, that he just wanted to play with the audience that just to that moment. That
Monk does that.
Yeah. Monk's got some very cheeky moments. I mean, are there parallels between classical music and jazz in that regard?
I suppose. I suppose yes. As you were saying,
the relationship that they have with dissonance and
I mean, from what you just described, definitely. There's definitely that like moment when you just finish on that note, that is just, hey, let's do this chord, and then that's like, hey, yeah.
Because Monk's music, it could almost be comedy music at times. It's so blatantly, that's what the way it feels. Is that a good way to describe it? Because when I hear Mozart, I can hear that kind of cheeky humour. And is that what you think? Is that what Monk is actually doing, or is it intellectual, or?
I don't know what Monk's thinking. I don't know what he's thinking. I don't think he was very talkative about that stuff. But I suppose it's like a child kind of approach in some way. Sometimes, like. But in the same time, he's extremely, some of those tunes are just so hard. I've heard that he wrote some of those tunes just to keep band interested showing up to the rehearsal. So it's like, Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't think of it as a comedy because I'm so used to it. You know, I think of it as a very serious thing. Because I mean, people who take it to the next level, who learn all the 70 tunes and you know all the
I mean
chords.
humor. Yeah, there's a humor. Do you
Yeah,
find
yeah.
the same? I mean, because I find that when I listen to Mingus, I find his humor not so much in the harmony, but in the textures between the instruments, the way he uses the instruments around him.
Hmm.
Do you agree with that sentiment? That it's kind of like for him, it's like a texture of the orchestration. That's the kind of sometimes it becomes almost farcical that everybody starts contributing to this crazy kind of texture.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I see what you mean, but I think once you kind of live in that world for longer, it's not crazy anymore. Like it's just like it becomes part of norm, you know. So it just seems crazy, I suppose, from you know, I don't know. The more you do it, the less crazy it is, you know. So at where I am standing, I'm like so just part of it, like.
Well, when you see, I mean, I would draw a parallel with, say, expressionism, with art. When you look at really quite disturbing images, and you think, well, it's only an image, and yet you get a sort of emotional response from it, and with music, when you get some regardless of what the sentiment is, it's like strong. What I'm talking about really is a strong emotions one way or the other. So a strong emotion to laugh or to let go, or do you see any
Yeah, yeah.
parallels between sort of artistic expression, like what not only musicians are trying to do, but artists in general are trying to
Get emotion.
convey this message,
Yeah, yeah.
of something or another, and
No, definitely. Yeah. Of course.
so.
I mean, as a musician, you kind of are so involved with this stuff that you forget that. But yeah, that's what's supposed to be. You know, that's supposed to. Music is something that evolves emotion. It's
So,
supposed to be.
some of the bands that you've played with, do you prefer to work in like smaller bands, like trios, or do you prefer like larger band settings? What's your kind of your feeling about the ensembles that you play with? What's your ideal setting, and what sort of things have you tried?
I don't know. Again, I sort of see every kind of band and every situation for what it is. So I don't sort of have, oh, this is what I like over everything else. I like doing many things. So I would be I sort of I suppose I would get bored if I was doing just one thing. But I mean I was doing trio for a long time. I was really used to that setting. These days, you know, but duos, I like duo. I like small bands. I would say my answer is, but I've done big bands too. So I like, you know, there's magic into the power of being something like, you know, something bigger. So I think every of those things have like something to see in there, you know, something why I like a particular thing. I've done, I think trio and quartet has been maybe more what I've done, but I've done all kind of things, you know. So you know, there's African bands like that. It's just a different feel, you know. Everything, you know, it's not jazz, so it's more about dance as well, you know, and rhythm. Um, so yeah, it's not just about how many people; it's about what style it
So,
is.
so do the same rules apply for when you play solo? Is it the same, or is it more
I don't
difficult,
actually
or
play solo gigs, solo guitar. I don't do that. I did that in the very beginning stage of my career, but I stopped doing that pretty much then.
I mean, if you were to have to play, let's say you had to play a small set and you had to, say, do two or three solo numbers, do you have an approach to playing solo? Because I mean, obviously, your day-to-day practice is on your own, so
Yeah,
therefore you
yeah,
are solo.
yeah.
So, um,
And I kind of tend to post those kind of things as well online, yes. I suppose.
Is it
approach...
more difficult playing solo, or is it easier with a band, or is it just down to the role that you have within the context?
I think it's down to the role. I think everything is hard and easy. You know, for me personally, I prefer playing with people because I like the musical communication. I prefer that. I like to hear what bass players doing. I like to listen to bass. I love listening to drums. I love that feeling of being part of this and getting ideas. It's especially improvised setting, you know, getting ideas from what your band is doing, you know, and sort of interacting with each other. I really like that. That's why I love playing, is because of playing with people. That's why I decided to not do the solo kind of guitar gigs since because I remember that as a sort of lonely experience back in the day. But the thing is, I could change my mind, right? That's what I'm saying now. Maybe in a year or two, you'll catch me suddenly starting playing you know, solo guitar gigs. Who knows? Like, I'm open to it, but at this point I'm sort of like, hey, I like playing with people, and I don't currently do solo guitar gigs.
Now you're a teacher as well, so do you have a specific approach to teaching, or is it individual led?
More individual, just based on what the student is about, you know. So, and then, you know, depends if it's through the program or it's through, if it's private, there's, you know, obviously one thing is it's through the program the person is following through the curriculum where everything is covered, then we're working on creative stuff. But generally, yeah, if its approach is defining what the person's goals are and working towards those goals, you know, like trying to find the path for this person to reach the goals that they want to reach.
Yeah. How do you identify, apart from what they say, if you see when they're playing, you know, you obviously have to analyze what they're doing.
Yeah.
What are your insights when you see someone do, you know, when you feel that they're going off in the wrong direction, or they've got, you know,
how do you deal with that? Then I define that and say, hey, you have to work on your tone or time or whatever it is, and give them specific exercises for that. So I kind of come up with, sometimes I follow a book, but actually more so I don't do the grades these days, because mostly I teach American students. So at least these days. So I used to follow the grade exam stuff, but I haven't done that recently. So yeah, it's really defining kind of like this is what they want to do, and seeing their weakness. If they don't see that weakness or the hole in the knowledge, sometimes it's theory, you know, sometimes it's and they just don't understand. They ask me the question, that I realize they don't actually have that thing that builds up to that question. So then I'm like, hey, we have to cover this. So yeah, I just sort of like, it's basically finding, again, same as I approach practicing, finding weakness. And
which of the Godins do you use then?
Because
you've got a few of them, haven't you?
Yeah, I only have two actually. I don't have as many as you have.
You've got an electric and a classical, is it?
Yeah. A nylon string one with Melodiac input. I just actually forgotten what is it. What was the name of it? But Godin Montreal, I think 2005. It's so they don't make it
really
anymore.
Nice, yeah.
Yeah. So I was really I like each of those guitars for different reasons, and I also have problems with each of them. So I mean, as of like my own personal, not that they're like, I like Godin. Like actually I have more problems with my Gibson than I have with Godin. So Godin I don't have much problems with.
What's your, I mean, have you got one guitar that you always gig with at the moment?
Yeah, I switch between this 135 Gibson and Godin Montreal,
Okay.
because of certain things that each guitar kind of sort of have or don't have, or little issues that sort of, I was supposed to fix and then it wasn't fixed, and sort of, I don't know why.
Yeah, I demoed the Montreal and I really liked it. So I still, in the back of my mind, I'm still looking out for one.
But one of those newest models, because I have like 2005, they don't make that one anymore.
Right. Well, this would have been about 6-7 years ago or something. I don't know.
So it could be that one.
They're really nice. Yeah,
I haven't tried the other ones because I know that there's Montreal. They look totally different than mine. They probably sound similar though. Yeah, I like each of. I don't have one favorite because as I said, like so there's like a little action thing on this one. Have like a amazingly nice neck. Feel, and I like P90 pickup.
Okay.
But my Godin, I think it's humbuckers. Kind of like that too, but the feel of this guitar is my favorite currently. Yeah. But there is a certain thing that it has like slight feedback or something that I know there's a little problem that I'd either have to change all the electronics or something. So sometimes I take the other guitar because it's kind of more reliable, I feel. But the feel of this is currently, for the feel, this is the one that I like currently.
Right. So now I want you to imagine you're packing your suitcase.
Yeah.
And you're going to a desert island, right? It's only you on this island. And you've got room for 3 albums to take with you. What 3 albums would you take, like CDs?
Yeah, I was thinking about this, but I couldn't come up with the answer, to be honest. It's too many. I probably would take something from Sonny Rollins and Monk.
Okay.
But the third one, I don't know. It's probably, I know it sounds weird that I'm not picking guitarists, but I don't know. I would pick Sonny Rollins, maybe with Jim Hall, something like, or without the guitar, or way out, way out west.
You wouldn't want a flamenco guitar album with you to remind you of flamenco?
No, that's my past. I left it behind. I like to visit. I went to Granada some weeks ago, and it was nice to go to the flamenco show. So that visiting, but I wouldn't want to stick around. It was nice. I still like it, but it's just such a huge world, It's a very different world, like for me anyway. The way I feel. Who knows though? I could change my mind. Talk 3 years. Who knows what I say?
Have you got any favorite effects pedals? Because you see, I've got all mine.
I see you have so many things there.
Have you got any favorites that you ever think, oh, I'm going to use this at my gig? Because I don't see you ever using them.
I seem to buy pedals, but then not use them. Holy Grail. I had the Holy Grail reverb.
Okay.
I kind of liked for a while, but then I packed it up and forgotten about it. But I did like it for a while. So for a while, I liked that one. There's this Game Changer Plus I kind of like, but again, you kind of have to have the specific gig, specific situation to even use it. So it's like, I don't know. I'm not a pedal person. I sort of always think I'm supposed to use pedals. It's just this thing that sometimes comes over and it's like, hey, and then sometimes some people ask me, oh, do you use pedals? And then I'm like, yeah, I can use, and then I, take it out and set it up and stuff.
And what about these guitarists who use like really heavy chorus, the old that 80s sound? Have you, the sort of shimmery effect like that? Because there was one point that all the jazz guitarists, especially all the American guys, that's what they were doing. In the 80s, that's you weren't jazz unless you had a chorus pedal.
Yeah, I don't know. I must say, I don't know. I like clean sound. That's why I sort of keep sort of not using the pedals. Oh, yeah. I don't even think I have one of those. I need to, although I might be wrong. I need to look at my pedal bag. I don't have a board. but yeah, I don't know. I think I like clean sound. I know. But I'm happy to use pedal stuff if people want me to.
Have you used the wah-wah?
Yeah. Actually, the wah-wah was the most, I suppose. It's like, because there was a phase when I was more like playing more funk stuff and.
Because Miles used the wah-wah quite a bit in the 70s.
Yeah, I know.
Because it lends itself automatically to sort of expression.
Yeah. Yeah, I used to use wah-wah quite a lot. I remember, just not in recent times. I suppose I could pick it out if I have that kind of gig coming. Yeah.
So lastly, Nora, where can people find you if they want to look you up?
My webpage and my Instagram.
And what's your webpage URL?
NoraBite.com.
Okay, NoraBite.com.
And then
what's your preferred social media? Do you use YouTube or Instagram, or what? How if people want to check you out, what would you recommend?
Instagram, I suppose, is the one I kind of have been using the more. It could change, but currently, I suppose Instagram. There's some YouTube stuff as well, not as much, I suppose.
Well, I've checked out some of the stuff on YouTube. Yeah. It's the one I use more, but yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I can see you've posted an awful lot on Instagram, and you've got a huge number of followers on Instagram.
Yeah.
How many are you up to now?
I don't know. Oh, it's 20,000 something. 20,000 point.
Yeah, it's pretty.
I think it's reducing now.
That's pretty good for a jazz guitarist. You know.
Yeah, but
fantastic.
This Guitarist though. It's Guitarist that check. It's Guitarist. Those followers are guitarists. It's not like they're fans. They just are guitarists.
Do you think guitarists are sort of curious types? Because you obviously must see so many guitarists sort of wondering what on earth you're doing, and when you're do you find that? Do you find the guitarist as sort of insatiable for other guitarists?
Yeah, I mean, there's an inspiration thing, Instagram is more like an inspirational kind of thing. I think a lot of people just scroll through and see what can inspire them to do something, I think most of these things are mostly inspirational. Like, even if I forget about, if I forget about music and guitar for a second and think of any YouTube channel, like there are gardening channels, right? It's just people watch gardening to be inspired to plant something, right? Or whatever they didn't. I think guitar and music is the same thing. You kind of go through some things and then it's like, hey, do I want to, also learn that or whatever. I think, I don't know. I'm sure there's all kind of people, out there. Gladly, I don't have like creepy messages these days. It's mostly really guitar related kind of people. And
well, I would hope so.
yeah, it's like, some women have some creepy stuff going as well. So
anyway, thank you very much for allowing me to have this chat with you.
I enjoyed. Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
And to give away some of your secrets.
Well, yeah, I'm a bit like a wild one.
But anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. That's nice.